You may have heard of a little dessert-based destination called Humble Crumble. Who would have thought that this well-loved dessert would go viral? It is my absolute pleasure to sit down now with Kim Innes, the founder and CEO of Humble Crumble, the world's first crumble bakery. Kim herself is a Forbes 30 Under 30 winner of the Everywoman Scale Up Awards and one of the NatWest Telegraph's top 100 female entrepreneurs to watch. Kim, it is my absolute pleasure to host you on Strategy and Tragedy.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. All right, I feel like we need to kick off the conversation with going viral. What happened? How did it make you feel? And what was the before and after with that moment?
Sure. So what went viral was one of our specials, our monthly specials, which was a pumpkin crumble, where the outside of the pumpkin, a miniature pumpkin, was the cup, and the inside was the fruit. So it was like a zero waste crumble. And Time Out posted that on their Instagram with 1 million followers. And almost immediately I had a queue in Spitalfields Market, in an otherwise dead market, because it was the first, just after the first lockdown. So London was pretty much deserted.
How long had you been going with Humble Crumble at this point, by the way?
I'd started the business in May 2018.
Oh, so it'd been a couple of years.
But I didn't really get a permanent spot anywhere. It was really difficult for me to get a spot in London because the food markets are quite saturated, and also markets don't really want to take a punt on someone unless they have a proven concept. So it's kind of like
such a chicken and egg situation.
Chicken and egg situation.
It's annoying.
And actually, Spitalfields was my first permanent market. I decided I was going to go hard or go home, try and really test the product. And I opened there 3 days before the first lockdown.
And what was it? So are we definitely going to talk about that as well? But what was it with Spitalfields that made them take that bet on you?
I think I had some previous markets where I went to and had success. So I had actually done a 2-month stint at the South Bank Centre along the river at Christmas. So I'd had that concept sort of proven, and I had numbers to go off and show that great, successful. And I also had like a social media strategy. I'd hired a friend of mine to do stuff, so there was consistency there.
Amazing.
And actually, I think it kind of just like stars aligned, where I think the social media person of Spitalfields had seen our post and was talking about it to the team, and then I'd applied to go then.
Wow.
So it was like it was like on their mind.
Amazing. I'm obsessed with the whole topic of hacking luck, by the way, and how much we can like strategize and stack the odds in our favor. So as much as luck is always a factor, you've still you still kind of put yourself out there to those opportunities. You still do what you can to stack those odds in your favor.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, sorry. So you kind of, the way I'm sort of understanding is you sort of gather these almost like mini case studies with these shorter stints coupled with social media. You've got a bit of that luck in there as well for Spitalfields. Take that bet on you.
Yeah. And then unlucky.
And then unlucky. This is the perfect strategy and tragedy story.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, no matter what I planned, a pandemic was going to come, and
no one would have predicted.
No one could have predicted.
Right.
Exactly.
So you remember it was literally 3 days before the first lockdown.
Yeah. So my Spitalfields was my first like 7-day-a-week 1-year contract. Like, let's go hard with this.
Wow.
And then I had just shut 3 days later, which was obviously terrifying, but it was, terrifying for many reasons. And I went home and I decided to like shut the business, obviously, and I restructured in a sense that I don't think I can really sit on my hands.
Right.
Like, and I was looking at supermarkets and how they didn't have any like baking ingredients, and I had all these baking ingredients from my suppliers. So I actually just made a bakery delivery service.
Wow.
Just like things like flours.
From your home?
From my home, yeah. Flour, eggs, like milk, even things like washing up liquid, all these things. And I was just doing like local deliveries of like, I had 50 clients.
Wow.
Because I couldn't really do more than that. And I was driving around and delivering stuff.
This is such a 2020 flashback, right? Because even you just mentioning these shortages has taken my mind back to those empty supermarket shelves. So I love how you've got all of this supply from obviously having placed these orders, having just signed this 1-year contract with Spitalfields. You've got that sat in your kitchen, and so you've adapted. I really feel like COVID also divided the crowd. I feel like there's either the people who could very easily like sit back, play video games, and then obviously you in the other camp of like, I need to keep busy.
I need to keep busy. But also, it was crazy to me to like, I was running obviously Humble Crumble for nearly 2 years at that point,
Right.
with not much success. And then I started a business that overnight was successful.
Mm.
I was like, wow, this is crazy. Suddenly everyone wants my delivery service.
Wow.
I remember thinking how funny that was.
Can I just ask, sorry, I know we've still got so much more of the story to get into, but with the previous 2 years and you just saying like not having had that much success, can you describe exactly what you're defining that as? Like, how bad was that? And crucially, why did you keep going?
I think, so I'll try and paint the picture like chronologically. I started in a farmer's market in Primrose Hill because that was the market that accepted me. It was a farmer's market, so it wasn't as big as a food market where they would want more brand credibility, but still they did want something, and I had to set up a stall in a garden and take pictures of it and pretend that we were already been trading. And it was the wrong market for Humble Crumble because it was a 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Sunday. Well, actually, it was a Saturday market, and people were getting their groceries. But so I think I made £60 on my first day, and my rent was £60.
Interesting.
But for me, it wasn't more around like financials. Obviously, would be great to like open and suddenly everyone wants a crumble, but it was more about just figuring out like the setup and just like learning things from other traders. I remember there was a trader next to me who told me that we have these fruit kettles and that those need to be at the front of the store because people want to see what you're doing. They want everything there.
Yeah.
And the fit is so important. So like that was just like an anecdotal thing that I picked up, and it shaped how Humble Crumble operates to this day. And then I moved to Mulberry Street Market, but there was a bit of a time gap. I managed to get like weekend, like so Saturday and Sunday markets for 2 months, and that was a trader spot. So I managed to get that. But the reason why I find it was a bit unsuccessful is because they kept moving my spot within the market, which you may not think makes a big difference, but
people get used to
people get used to where you are, and if you move one stop down,
they
just think you've gone.
Yeah.
So it was really hard to like build up a base there, but it was still much more successful than the Primrose Hill market. And then I kept doing different guest spots around London, so I never really was consistently trading until Spitalfields.
Did you have another day job alongside this?
So I was tutoring people. When I was at university, I set up a tutoring agency where I subcontracted university students to tutor their degree subject to GCSE and A-level students. And I just kind of continued that, but as in just for myself. I just thought I can do a few hours a day, make enough money to be able to keep going, and then put the rest of my time into Humble Crumble. But I mean, it was really difficult, and I felt quite directionless a lot of the time, being like, I don't really know where the next steps are.
And why I know obviously we're kind of like going back in the timeline here, so we should also touch on like why Crumble? Did you want to be an entrepreneur? Why this particular dessert? Why the food business? Why pop-ups?
I had the idea when I was studying. I've always made crumble for my family every week for about 10 years. It was actually one of the first things I ever learned how to make. I learned how to make it at school, and I really just enjoyed the fact that it would bring my family together. I've got quite a big family, so it would be one of the moments in the week where everyone would just like kind of come together and just like enjoy a crumble. I really enjoyed making that. So I kind of set myself on this task every week to try and make a different crumble, try and make it better, and my family were my guinea pigs. So when I was actually in Brighton, I was standing outside of an ice cream shop on a winter's day, looking in, and they didn't have any customers. And I had seen this ice cream shop in the summer be packed. So I was looking at them thinking, this is really successful summertime business. Like, what could they do in the winter? And because I had always made crumble, I think I just had the idea. I was like, they should be making crumble. And I actually initially was like, this is such a great idea. Like, it's so set up for the UK market, especially with the weather, especially with the fact that we love crumble here. We have conversations around what the best part of a crumble is. Like, it's so much
like national treasure.
It is a national treasure, yeah, for sure. And I was just thinking, like, yeah, how can I do this? And I looked into, like, so I was graduating from university, and I was like, maybe I should try and set up a cafe. and I looked into it, and I got really freaked out by all the numbers. And I'm not really a numbers person.
What were you studying at the time?
English literature.
So it wasn't like entrepreneurship or business, anything like that?
No, it wasn't that. But I basically, I found out things like, you know, the rents in Brighton, because Brighton was where I was looking. I was like, that's crazy. Then I learned about business rates. I couldn't believe that there was a tax on rent. I was like, rent's already really expensive. Then VAT, like, and then also just not knowing like any equipment, how to
staff, insurance,
everything. And I'm like, this is just too alarming.
Yeah.
So I put the idea aside, and I just flash forward that I was 2 years. I was working for a food startup, and that startup got bought by a large company, and I lost my job. And Humble Crumble, the idea had just been in my head for 2 years. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, I'm just going to strip it all back, and I'm just going to test it. Because if I don't, I'll really kick myself. I'll really kick myself, especially if I walk past a crumble place. I think I had that idea.
What a telltale sign, right? That thought, number one, that it's been on your mind for so long, but also that idea that I want to just kind of underline for the listeners, the idea that you've got in your mind right now. Imagine whether it's physical, digital, let's just keep with physical for this example here, is like walking down the street and seeing somebody else doing it, how that makes you feel. And obviously this part in your story is just like, you'd be, I guess, devastated, right? You're like, no, like this was my thing, my idea. On this point in the story, don't worry, I know we've sort of gone on a tangent, but we are going to, it's fine, listeners bear with, it's all good, it's all part of the story. At this point, what I have to ask you, because now it's kind of like 2 years in, lost your job, you've had this impetus now to actually go and launch the business. What I loved hearing you mention was how you read the Lean Startup and how you applied the principles from the land of tech, from Silicon Valley, around like MVP, market validation, etc., etc. I would love for you to describe that and outline those exact principles that you applied from the world of tech to food.
Yeah, I guess the whole street food stall is the start of that Lean Startup model, where you just put an idea out there and you test it. You get feedback, and then you tweak it based on that feedback, and then you test it. You get feedback and you tweak it. And I guess it's that cyclical growth, which is instead of linear, which I think has shaped Humble Crumble so much, and actually helped me a lot when I was standing behind the store and not having any customers or many customers, and feeling quite embarrassed because I'm really not a natural salesperson. So I kind of had that idea of like, if this isn't doing well, it's because like maybe the product needs to change a little bit, or I've priced it wrong, or I'm in the wrong market. And I kind of looked at it as an experiment. Everything is a small experiment, not like I'm
taking it personally.
Yeah,
like it's just feedback.
It's just feedback. And I think I've never made a business plan because I read that book, and I was like, ultimately, people don't really know what their customers want, and customers don't really know what they want, but you put something in front of them, they'll give you feedback on it.
Yeah, there's the classic Ford quote, isn't there? You ask people what they want and they'd say a faster horse. So were there any surprising discoveries in those early days? Was there something where you were like, wow, I did not see this coming?
Well, I kind of took Humble Crumble. I didn't really test just like, oh, does anyone want a crumble? Like a crumble place. I was like, does anyone want an alcohol infused crumble? Because I initially infused them with alcohol, trying to make them really interesting, like these kind of like crazy flavors that I'd serve my family, instead of going back and just being like, what is the basic of this, and seeing if people want that. And I think that was a big learning curve for me, that I didn't even want to put apple crumble on the menu at the beginning because I wanted people to try something that they wouldn't normally go for. But I've learned that people really want what they want. And so when about a year in, I was like, I'm just going to put apple crumble on the menu. And like immediately it was almost like, can I have a crumble? Can I have a crumble?
Wow.
I was like, wow, I've really shot myself in the foot with this.
Like trying to be so different.
Exactly.
And I guess also where you've had so many years practice of making crumble, like week in, week out, I would imagine that personally you'd want to like creatively extend yourself too, right? And be like, look at this amazing thing I can do, almost more like a creator than an entrepreneur, at least initially, where it's just like, no, actually, just strip it back, keep it simple. I love also that insight where you saw kind of the day and night, where you saw like as soon as you added that, the change was obvious. I think that's reassuring for entrepreneurs as well, is like, you will know, like if you're constantly changing, experimenting, if it's working, you will see the difference.
Yeah, for sure. And also just like give people what they want.
Yeah. You can't force anything.
You gotta at the end of the day, a business is about finances, and you know, if people want something, give it to them.
Serving the market.
Yeah.
For sure. Any other surprises in these early days?
I guess the main surprise for me was probably a marketing surprise, that I thought if I put up a stall that said, as she was calling them, crumble bars, because obviously it was alcohol infused as well,
right?
And I thought it was similar to like a sushi bar.
Yeah.
I used to have a slogan that said "Eat responsibly."
Nice.
But and so I had a sign that said crumble bar. I said humble crumble, and they'd have like the menu that had the different crumbles on it. But people would still come up to me and say, "What are you selling?" And I found that really interesting. I think obviously potentially one of the reasons why that was because the alcohol side of things, even though it was all burnt off, it just kind of confused people. But also they had never seen a crumble place before.
Yeah,
so
it was too many new things at once.
Even if I think it was just a crumble place without the alcohol in it, I think it would have been
still new.
Yeah. And just like, when you go into a market, you expect to see like crepes, you expect to see pizzas maybe, but you hadn't at that time expected to see crumbling.
No, definitely not. No, not at all.
So
it's funny, just on that note, sorry to interrupt, but it reminds me of another interview that I did, which was with Nick Telson-Sillett, who's the founder of Design My Night, which he then sold for like 30 million or something crazy. And one of the niggles, I feel like it still annoys him to this day, is people called it Design by Night. This is why I hesitated with the name, because I had that in mind. And he's like, that just doesn't know, but that doesn't even mean anything. What does design by night? And it's like, it's there in the website, but it's just those like these errors. Again, people are just they're not paying as much attention to the business as you are.
People need to get it immediately.
Yeah.
Right. So like it does need to really, really obvious.
Yeah.
And clear. Especially even, to be honest, actually, I think with all communication, like it needs to be simple and clear. Like I see some, points that people make, and I think, how can you condense that down to make it clearer? Because I want to get it immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. So where are we at in this? So you've done this early testing. Are we fast forwarding back to 3 days before lockdown at this point, or?
Well, we can go to when we opened after the first lockdown. So that was, I think it was June 15th. And we basically, I say we, I'm so used to saying we, but it was me at the time. I opened back up again in Spitalfields, and I actually, won't lie to you, I really thought about shutting the business down, because I was just like, the world has changed so much. And I don't know if Humble Crumble fits into the new way of the world. But I also thought, I don't really know what my skills are, and I don't really know what jobs I can get. So and I have this contract with Spitalfields, so like, let me still go
hack on anyway.
So I was there, and I had all this time because I didn't have any customers, and the market didn't have any customers. It was really quiet. So I decided to change my setup. I was previously, before the pandemic, I had a commercial kitchen that we rent 1 day a week, and I would prep everything there, and then I would bring everything to the markets. So I should say I would prep 1 day a week when I was doing a weekend market. For an everyday a week market, I'd prep more times a week. And instead I was like, okay, well, I don't want to stand here twiddling my thumbs, so I'm going to get rid of the commercial kitchen. I'm going to move an oven into this 2x2 meter stall with fridge, freezers, hobs, everything. I had the most packed stall you could ever imagine.
Right.
But I was there making everything fresh.
Right.
So that I could be really productive and also lean in costs.
Nice. Plus, of course, the theatre point.
Theatre, yeah.
Right, people seeing.
And I guess another thing I learned from that is people did come in because they could smell the crumble topping.
That's funny. Yeah, these sorts of things that you just wouldn't necessarily think about in a in a vacuum, like in a meeting room, talking to people. Yeah. It's all these little things, like until you're actually there in person, you're learning up those tricks of the trade. You're like, oh, actually, the smell is wafting around the market. Cool, Karen.
And I also just experimented in this time with specials because I thought I want to completely leverage social media if I can. I want to create something that's really interesting, especially because people are spending so much time on their phones. And actually, on that point, my friend of mine who's been Humble Crumble's social media manager for the past 4 or 5 years, actually, she all of her clients dropped her during the pandemic, and I was the only one that kept her on. And I kept saying, like, let's post. This is a really good time when everything else is quiet to make some noise. Yeah. And we were gaining some followers that way and more brand awareness. People saying, like, I can't wait to come and try you when everything opens up again. So that was just my little tip there. When everyone thinks to pull the marketing when things go wrong, but really lean into it.
Oh my god, listeners, I did not feed that line to Kim. That is absolutely music to my ears. So I used to own a marketing consultancy before this and went through these highs and lows. And yeah, the moment you start putting the marketing, it's like, I mean, clearly I'm biased, but it's like downward spiral, guys. So I'm of course very pleased to hear you say that. But no, really sorry, because I loved how you phrased it before with, like, when everything's quiet, you've got that opportunity to make noise. Yeah. Were there any like practical tips and tricks from social media that you leveraged at that time? Yeah. Did you like double down on reels, for example? Like any practical bits?
I'm trying to think. Were the reels a thing then?
Maybe they were. Like just started. That's a good point, actually. Yeah, let's go back.
Well, my social media manager, she actually is from New Zealand and she got stuck in New Zealand. So she was in New Zealand for 2 years.
Wow. Okay. Not a bad place to be.
Not a bad place to be, but obviously it meant
completely other side of the world.
She wasn't there to take photos or anything. So actually that's when we decided to invite micro-influencers to come, and they would take the content and we would repost it. They'd get some free crumbles. Nice. And it was obviously a really nice way of working because it was a win-win for everyone.
You turned lemons into lemonade with this situation, right?
And she actually invited one influencer down who then took the pictures of the pumpkin crumbles, and on her page it went viral, and Time Out saw it there and said, can we post this?
Amazing.
So that's sort of the thing that changed everything. And practically from when we went viral, it was like there's a queue of like 20 people when there was no queue before, and then that queue kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because it was like this really this like spark that people really then got that a crumble place existed, whereas previously they just didn't. Yeah, they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so they would share it with their friends and family. They'd come, they'd take their own pictures or videos, and they would go viral as well. So within a week we went viral on Instagram and TikTok.
Wow, the best marketing you could ever wish for, right?
We had people in the queue chatting to each other like, oh, are you here from TikTok, or are you here from Instagram? Like, yeah. Did you see this on Time Out? All this stuff. It was like really quite wholesome.
Yeah.
And we ended up, it was we at this time because I managed to hire some people. We had to really quite quickly change the operations
to cope with this huge
because
change in demand.
There was like no space behind this store because I rammed it full of equipment, and it was small to begin with. So Spitalfields let us use a unit opposite us that had a kitchen, so we were then servicing ourselves, making every the crumble and fillings, everything there, and bringing it to this market store. And then it just got too small, so we ended up having to move everything to that kitchen. And then we moved again to a bigger space, and then we were there for about 2 years, and again outgrew that space, and now we're in a 2,000 square foot bakery.
Oh my god, incredible. All right, I definitely want to get into scaling, and now the business is obviously completely different level to what it was in those very like humble beginnings. Sorry, I cannot help making all these puns. But just before we do, just sticking with this viral moment, there's 2 quick questions I want to ask you on that. One was the guess like how how you've kind of, I guess, fostered this culture of creativity. I know you talk about like experimenting a lot, and there's two things here. One is like keeping things simple, like we were saying before, like people just want like a basic, well done, like apple crumble. But at the same time, you've got this amazing creation that led you to going viral. So I want to talk a little bit around that kind of the creativity piece and balancing that with business. But then also, sorry, it's just because I don't want to forget too many things at once, but also from the business perspective, how much was that viral moment kind of like, clearly it wasn't just a one-off spike, because it was before or not, like you've been able to maintain that growth. I'm sure it's not quite at the same like crazy level, but from that business perspective, like how do you kind of make sure that you don't sort of spike back down again like straight after that viral moment and keep maintaining that growth? Quick one, this is future Steph coming to you from beyond. If you're enjoying this episode, then you can probably guess what I want you to do. Please do me one tiny favour that costs you nothing and takes a second of your time. Hit that subscribe button. It really helps to support this show, and I'm really grateful for you listening. Let's get back into it. How do you kind of make sure that you don't sort of spike back down again like straight after that viral moment and keep maintaining that growth?
When we went viral, I did think, is this going to be a 2-week thing?
Right.
Like, I have no idea. But all I could do is, control what I was making, what my team were producing at the time, which was hopefully really good quality crumbles. And actually, I've seen a lot of, especially in the food space, a lot of businesses go viral and
one hit wonder.
And you can kind of see it from the outside, where that if you're not really passionate about the product that you're creating, and you really want to create the best thing that you can, I think, and if you're just trying to create something to go viral, then I think that's the wrong.
There isn't that substance behind it.
Yeah, and customers will find that out, and then you'll be that one hit wonder. So you just really need to be first focusing on your product and then your marketing.
Maintain the quality. So linked to that then, I guess, like the quality and like making sure you meet those high quality standards that you have. Obviously talk about how you maintain that while scaling, but then linking to that other question around the creativity, like what made you want to go out and do this like pumpkin crumble when you know that it's kind of like the basics, they're just like, they do well?
Well, I didn't really know that at the time. I know that now. I mean, 50% of what we sell is apple crumble and custard. So, like, it's obviously people want the classic. Right. And also as well, like apple crumble is very much maybe the entry point. A lot of people who come to us have never had a crumble before, and they'll go for the most traditional one. But the specials are a really good form of marketing for us, and obviously creativity too. I really want to make sure that as a business, we keep having fun with crumble and keep trying to like pull it as much as we can, but still maintaining like a really good quality product that is a crumble.
Do you do anything creative with your team? Do you do any sort of like exercises or activities or anything to maintain that creative spirit internally? Okay. You just like go wild.
I don't know. I just think we have a real mentality of just test it.
Yeah.
I think that lean startup mindset is still there of like, is this a good idea? I have no idea. Yes, let's put a small test out there. I mean, look, we were actually like, an example is we have a humble matcha swirl on with Mendy at the moment. There's no branding on that because we're testing to see if people want it. Like that stuff can actually take a lot of planning to get like the cups and everything sorted.
Right.
But why would I spend all the money and time waiting for these cups if I don't know if the product's going to do very well?
Yeah.
And actually the product is doing really well, so I'm probably going to.
But I guess there's still never having led a food business whatsoever. Like the closest I've been to like the food industry is like being a waitress. So this is very much like coming from the outside. I would imagine in that vein of kind of mitigating risk, we're not going to overspend. We just want to test it out, validate the market first. And imagine you still have to make the supply orders, right? As a minimum order quantities, there's still got to be a financial bet to even test out different things. So like, is there a decision-making process with like, which ones do we test out? Or are you able to just keep that like so minimal that it doesn't matter?
I
You see what I mean, or no?
I kind of see what you mean, but there isn't. Our suppliers are like really like good partners
Nice.
for us. So, and they supply a lot of London restaurants as well. So they have, you can just like say like, I want to order some chili powder.
Right.
Not that we've ever put that in a
Right.
crumble, but it came to me.
Maybe this is a new.
Maybe
You heard it here first.
Chili chocolate crumble.
Hot summer. Love it.
And you know, I have a recipe developer who's also head of quality control, like product development. She will think ahead of time and what specials do we want, what do we want on the menu, and she'll go and she'll test it. She'll just has like lots of fun doing it.
Yeah.
The team will say, have you thought about this for this, etc. We then get all of the team to make it as a trial. We then if you're a part of our broadcast channel on Instagram, you'll see that every month you can get a free crumble. Come and taste our specials. We give you a little mini crumble.
All right, we're definitely going to put a link to that in the show notes. Nice one. Thanks for that. This is worth listening, at least to this point, guys.
But this way, you know, we get to, have no food waste from our crumble training, which is really important to our business.
Nice.
And also we get feedback from customers.
Yeah.
They can tell us what they like or not.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah. So having great partners helps because you can just be like, can we grab some of this and that?
Yeah.
Play around.
I mean, as well, like if you really needed to, you can just get something from the supermarket.
Yeah.
If you're just doing a test before you're like going to scale it.
Yeah.
For instance, I mean, actually, when we did the Humble Matcha as well, which is a matcha with our frozen custard in the middle. So it's like an iced matcha. And then we also have a raspberry gel, but that raspberry gel is the same gel from our trifle crumble.
Yeah.
So we're like repurposing that. And but we just decided, like we saw, basically the backstory is someone on TikTok said, I think a humble crumble frozen custard would go really well with matcha, and she tried it out, and we were like already thinking about something to do with matcha along those lines.
So cool.
So we just tested it out, but that really like pushed us to try it, and we just said, yeah, let's get 4 different matchas.
Yeah.
Actually, we had 3 different matchas, and then somebody that I had met said who wanted to start a matcha business, and she was asking me a little bit of advice in my partner's business, Chigo's Bakehouse. We met there. She happened to message me on that same day that we were doing matcha testing.
Wow.
That said, can I give you some matcha? And I said, well, we're actually doing blind taste testing this afternoon. If you can get it to me then.
What a coincidence.
I know, isn't that crazy coincidence?
So crazy.
Yeah, so she brought it and we did blind taste testing, and actually that was our favourite.
Oh matcha. My God. Meant to be. Yeah. Do you believe in destiny?
No.
I feel like I knew the answer to that, but I had to, because that is wild. I just also have to comment on the fact that, of course, you know, at this point in the business, given your huge following and your level of social media engagement, like the fandom doesn't always need to come from inside the business, right? If you see someone on TikTok, it's like following. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs feel, especially early days, feel like they need to have the answers. I feel like this is something that doesn't quite get talked about enough, is like, it's not cheating. It's not like you're doing it the wrong way by getting your answers from your customers. If anything, that's the right way. Like if you're actually getting those signals.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a classic phrase of like, people think that when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a boss, but actually, like, everyone's your boss.
Yeah, exactly. All your customers are your
boss. All
your
customers are your boss. Your team are your boss. Like, if they're unhappy, then they're the problem.
Your boss just shifts, don't they?
Yeah.
Have there been any other successful specials that have come from a fan request from social media?
Oh gosh. Do you know, there may have been, but right now I'm drawing a real blank.
No worries. All right, I'll come back to that one. No worries. Oh, I can imagine there's been so many over the years. All right, so we're at the point as well in the story, like, you're scaling up. This is the first time that you're operating a business of this size. So you've got the practicalities of like going from shoving these ovens in a 2x2, like stall and spittle, so they're like, oh my God, we're outgrowing. How else did you navigate that wild scale-up journey? I know that you're amazing at delegating, so talk to us about that.
Well, before I was delegating, I'll just say one point that I started Humble Crumble using very much like home equipment or like mid or entry commercial equipment, like a big oven that I was just plug in.
Right.
Whereas actually commercial equipment, it's like, commercial ovens are crazy. Just let me tell you, they they need water in, they need water out, they can steam, they can clean themselves, they can rapidly get to temperature.
Wow. Whole other ball.
Whole other ball game. They're about £13,000 for an
Are these like your, you know how you have like boys and their toys? Is this like your toy for you?
It's my toy, but I have to say I was really excited to get this oven because I was like, this means we've made.
That's it. Just on that note, actually, sorry, because in your bio, obviously, I've kind of rattled off a few of the incredible awards. So congratulations, you know, all these like amazing accolades. But I feel like even just sort of picking up on your body language and stuff, things like that oven, was that like more of a milestone for you? Or are there any other like specific moments that actually really mean a lot to you beyond the superficial?
I guess having the oven was cool. To be able to like afford a £13,000 oven was really great. And I could just see the immediate impact of it. And also one of the reasons why I went down that route was, well, there was many reasons. One was, you know, we need to make more at once. A lot of it stemmed from we have a huge amount of demand and we need to figure out how to make that quicker. Yeah, so we've got really long queues. People were waiting like hours for a crumble and I was like, this is not sustainable for that to happen. So we need to change all our equipment. And the first thing we changed was the oven.
Yeah.
So we could produce more crumble topping.
Just capacity.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we actually added a different piece of equipment which allowed us to create, instead of making our fruits and our custard in pans, it was just like much larger quantities, much more like this technology can kind of just like work with you. It's like temperature probed. So for instance, before we had this machine, one of the common things that would happen is our custard would boil over, or we'd get burnt berries at the bottom of the pan because it wasn't stirred enough.
Right.
Whereas this machine, just like because of the temperature probing, it allows like consistent temperature.
Yeah, amazing.
And also like holds it there and waits for the person to do the next step before it continues.
Right.
Anyway, that's just like
leveling up, like
it levels up a lot.
Yeah.
And then we also had to get in a different payment service where we were taking orders manually, and so that's like someone comes up and said, hi, I'd like a crumble, which is actually really simple, but actually a lot of people, you may not know this, but when they come up to the beginning of a queue, they'll say, hey, what's the best thing on this menu? Like, talk to me about it. But there's like 40, 50 people behind you, and you're like...
The total lack of self-awareness. Like, could you not see the menu from like a few people back to make up your mind? Some people...
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, but then, you know, some people want that, you know, they really want the best thing, or they're like not sure. So I do understand that. But so what we ended up having to do is getting these iPads in, where it meant that 3 or 4 people could order at once.
Yeah, nice.
Which just really sped things up. Anyway,
yeah,
we kind of were on this process of like, let's keep improving the quality of our product by having better equipment, but also how can we improve our service and speed of service.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And can I ask you, from a risk perspective, what gave you the confidence to make certain investments? Because with this type of consumer business, it's like I mentioned before, my last company was a marketing consultancy, so it's like B2B, so I've got client contracts. So that gives me more confidence. I can say I can quite confidently forecast what's going to be coming in over the next however many months. In business, obviously, you've only got, you know, past performance, which of course isn't always an indicator of future, especially the rollercoaster ride that you've been through. So so how do you feel confident enough to say, I'm going to invest 13k in an oven, or I'm going to take this contract when?
Well, I think starting from a market stall really takes away a lot of risk. Like, I wasn't paying commercial. I mean, actually, that's not true. The rents I was paying were high, but at the time of COVID, they switched to like a revenue share. So that way it was low risk from that perspective. Humble Crumble went from serving, you know, 2 crumbles a day, then going viral and serving like 20, then hundreds, and then thousands a day.
Wow.
It was a very sudden
increase. Exactly. Yeah.
And that was a very sudden increase in cash flow. Which obviously really helped.
So then did that help you to create a buffer and just like a financially a runway?
Yeah,
so
financial runway. Yeah, definitely. I also don't have any business partners. So it was
as an investors.
I don't have any investors. Yeah. I don't have a co-founder who we needed to split the revenue with to be able to make money.
Yeah.
So I think that really does help. And actually, that is quite a big point when starting a business. If you do want to start a business, I only go with a co-founder if they can offer you something that you can't do yourself. Otherwise, it actually can be a bit of a risk to the business because you do have to pay both of yourselves.
Yeah. You're just doubling up like the salaries, the needs, everything else. There's such pros and cons. I feel like there's a whole other like separate hour conversation just on co-founders, isn't it? And I think such a huge part of it is the type of business that you're running. I think if it is like a VC-backed tech company, there's a lot of arguments to say, more from an investor standpoint, that they just feel like they can have more confidence when there is two of you. But obviously in this case, you clearly haven't needed one. So,
well, I do have my boyfriend. He is the co-founder of Chai Guys. We met in Spitalfields Market during the pandemic time when there weren't any customers, and he has for the last 3 or 4 years now helped grow Humble Crumble. And he is essentially like my business partner now. But when I started, I didn't have anyone. And he has the complete, well, there's crossovers, but he really complements my skill set. So it's not to say don't get partners.
Sure.
It's just don't rush into finding someone because you're scared of doing it alone.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's totally true. And I think also you built up such an incredible team around you. I love also... I know we haven't touched on this, but I know that you promote from within as well, which is fantastic. You've got great loyalty. And I had this as a solo founder as well. And I felt like you're plugging those gaps with your team around you anyway. And if you foster that great culture, that great environment, it's you don't feel like there's that missing piece necessarily.
Yeah, I think you can learn anything. So
yeah,
if someone's up for the challenge of a new role, then give it to them.
Yeah.
Try and obviously give them as much support as possible. But...
yeah, love that. So where are we at today with Humble Crumble? Like, how big is it? How many sites? And what does the future hold?
So we have 5 sites, 4 within London and 1 in Bicester Village. There's about 80 team members.
Wow.
Yeah.
80 of you.
80, but I'll caveat that with some of them are part-time.
Yeah.
Because it's the nature of hospitality.
Yeah.
We are looking at, what we should be doing as our next steps as a business, but also really trying to refine our like internal processes.
Any exclusive scoops you can give us on strategy and tragedy for what's next, other than the chili chocolate special that's coming?
I just said any inside scoops? No. I don't know what.
There are exciting things to come.
I think there'll be lots of exciting specials. I hope that we can open in places where people want us. That journey will be exciting. It's about really choosing the right locations. And, actually I was just having a conversation with somebody before this about how big do you grow before it stops being special? And I don't know what the answer is to that.
As in
the
brand feeling special
for the customer.
Okay.
Because I don't really know what to call ourselves at the moment. We've got 5 bakeries. Are we a chain? I don't know. Like, chain has a dirty word, like associations to it, in my head at least. But then you have places that do really, really good jobs of it. Actually, Gales is a pretty good example. I'm going off on tangent.
No, so I think it's a great question though, because I think, I don't know. I think you can. I think like it goes back to your core principle of the product quality. I think because what I was about to say was I was going to say as long as you remain a destination based brand, but then I thought like even if you do move into like direct to consumer or supermarket, there are still lots of special treats and brands. Like Crosta Mollica, for example, is like a household favorite of ours. Like the pizza, they branched into ice cream, and it still feels. I guess it's sort of slightly more premium pricing, the packaging's gorgeous, and the product quality is gorgeous. So maybe I just want you to be huge, but I think it would be possible. I can visualize it. But it's a good question.
It's definitely possible, but it's just
thinking about it,
thinking about the right next steps, and just it's hard to reverse a decision, so you need to really think about it.
Do you know about the Bezos decision making framework?
No.
Okay, well, this is good to share if any listeners haven't heard of it as well. So there is a quadrant of whether something is urgent or important. Urgent, important, and then reversible, irreversible. And Jeff Bezos, he's got I think he calls it like the two-way door principle. And his idea is like most decisions are reversible. Like you can go in, you can to your point, obviously you're a fantastic case study for like the power of dipping your toe in and testing, getting feedback and market validation. It was like there are few where it's completely like life and death and it's like completely irreversible. So yeah, if you're ever kind of stuck with making a decision, outline all the factors. Like, is this urgent, important, reversible, irreversible? And then that feeds into the ALAP and ASAP decision making. So it's like, because most decisions are reversible, try to mitigate that risk as much as possible, go through any other sort of heuristics decision making process, and then test it in that lean way. For the fewer that are irreversible, the ALAP is then as long as possible. Like, really think about it, really meditate. So yeah, there you go. That's my little
thank you very much. I find all these like tips and like management
like frameworks
really interesting.
Same. I definitely need them, because stuff like this is just like, I think you were saying before about you just figure things out as you go along, and unless someone else shares that with you and this actually put that kettle in the front, or like this is what this commercial oven looks like, you are just left to your own devices, right? And I think with decision making in particular, we make, I think, is it like 30,000 like micro decisions a day, and I think as entrepreneurs that number probably shoots up to like 100,000. So you get that decision fatigue over time, and so having those sort of principles and frameworks to be like, how do we keep moving, how do we try and make the right decision? I think there's also something on not putting that pressure on yourself to make the right decision, because you can only make the best decision possible like with the information that you have at that moment in time. And so
yeah, for sure. Also, you can do loads of research.
Yeah, but then how helpful is that? I feel like there's a lot of research that you can kind of find the research to back up the answers that you actually want, and then
I guess I'm the reason why I said that is actually, again, it kind of comes back to my partner. His name is Gabriel. He's such a researcher, whereas I'm like, let's just try it.
Yeah, nice.
Let's just try this.
Yeah.
And there's like real cases for both.
Yeah.
Humble Crumble being the first crumble bakery, like no one else has done it before, so like there's not much research that you can do, right? So it's like, let's just put it out there. Actually, Gabriel, he and his co-founder launched a bakery in Portobello Road called Chai Guy's Bakehouse, and for that, Gabe basically spent hours and hours and hours researching what a kitchen setup and equipment needs to be like looking at like, you know, images of different bakeries around the world that he really liked, you know, speaking to bakers, YouTube videos and these things, and then getting like good designers in to try and figure out like flows of stuff. And he's not a baker, he doesn't have that first-hand experience, but he researched it, and you know, he got in really well-trained bakers who came in and said, this equipment is amazing and the layout is amazing. It's not a huge kitchen, but they've said this is the best kitchen I've ever worked in.
Wow. Yeah, kudos.
Yeah, I can't do
those.
Yeah,
I'm just like, I'm so bored. I'm such a bias for action. And I think the caveat, clearly Gabriel does not fall into this category whatsoever, because that sounds amazing. But I think the big word of caution that I would want to put on this podcast is I definitely meet a lot of people firsthand who will fall into that trap of analysis paralysis, or will use it as an excuse.
Yeah.
And they will use like the planning, the researching, I haven't done enough homework, I haven't signed up to enough courses, I haven't blah, 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 when really it's just masking that fear. So I think you're totally right. I think with everything, the answer is always somewhere in the middle. I think in business, it's that yin and yang. I think also it depends on that stage in business you're at as well, right? I think if you are just starting out, you have to be scrappy and test.
Yes. I'll say Gabriel had already set up a business selling chai.
Yeah.
And this was an extension of Chai Guys.
Yeah.
So he wasn't someone that was like using it as an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kim, thank you so much for opening up and sharing so much of your journey. It's been so genuinely interesting, from starting out based on kind of this passion, but then applying the principles of the lean startup in the tech world, applying that to the food business, all the kind of the highs and lows and lessons along the way. It's been amazing. So thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening as well. Really hope you've enjoyed this too. Leave us a comment, let us know what you learned from this, and of course don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.